Between precarity and autonomy, reconfiguring risk and responsibility in the gig economy in India. The gig economy in India has been hailed by the state for job creation and derided by its critics for denying rightful recognition to and rights to gig workers. This paper focuses on the disproportionate division of risk and responsibility in the gig economy. I argue that the precarity induced by the gig economy is systemic and part of the larger history of work under capitalism. In this, I follow in a long line of scholarship that sees the standardized work pattern of the post-war period with security for workers as the exception and not the norm. However, I do argue that digital technology mediated work is also distinct in creating the room and illusion of autonomy for workers. Even as autonomy is structurally denied, workers have been able to rework and negotiate and subvert algorithmic control to gain autonomy and build solidarities in a form of work that is otherwise built to atomize. To understand this, I turn to the pandemic, which has played a critical role in both highlighting and exacerbating the unequal division of risk and responsibility that structures work in the gig economy, and where tensions between precarity and autonomy become evident. Autonomy has been particularly important for the entry of many gig workers into the sector, and this is especially true of the years prior to the pandemic. Many delivery partners use the term freedom fighters to actually describe themselves because of the sense of autonomy that they considered integral to this form of work. The deep desire for autonomy is also important, especially in the social context of India, which is otherwise rife with hierarchy. And yet, the structure of work has been one where this autonomy has been weaponized to deny responsibility for workers and to induce exploitation. The scales have also tipped towards precarity rather than autonomy through the pandemic. In the early phase of the pandemic, a sudden lockdown was announced in India in March 2020, which severely affected the working classes. Gig workers, though not out of work, were instead put to work, as services of food delivery were identified as a form of essential work to continue through the period of lockdown. Workers who could continue to participate in the work, putting themselves and their families at grave risk. S, a worker in Delhi, mentioned that he was able to participate in the work by making his own arrangements for risk mitigation. Staying with his family in a rented accommodation, he shifted for the months of the lockdown to the terrace of the building he lived in, sleeping, eating, and bathing there, separate from his family for the worry of passing the infection on to them or to his neighbors. N, a worker in Bombay, decided to actually give up work during the period because his wife was pregnant and he considered it particularly risky. For most workers, though, there was little choice in the matter, and with no other work on offer, continuing with gig work was often the only way out. But they had to do so by relying on their own resources to keep safe. Platforms offered little support to the workers. A single mask and a bottle of sanitizer were the only tools of safety extended to workers at the beginning of the lockdown. Yet safety measures on them were aplenty. For example, regular temperature checks of drivers, compulsory registration on apps that monitored and surveilled them have been the norm. In the construction of safety, then, it is the safety of the consumer that has actually been foregrounded. N noted that, when he conducted work, it was only through WhatsApp groups of drivers that he actually heard about apartment buildings where there were COVID cases and not through information received via the app or through the company or platform. The risk that workers endured was also amplified through the pandemic precisely because some platforms chose the period to alter their payment structures. Incentives were slashed along with a reduction in per kilometer rates, forcing workers to spend longer hours at work to often make the same amount that they made prior to the pandemic. As I stated, due to the economic hardship of the lockdown, demand in general was also low during the time, resulting actually in workers staying logged in for longer hours. It's important to note that the pandemic was also precisely the time when platforms expanded operations. From food delivery, platforms expanded into services such as couriering documents, the delivery of home cooked meals, as well as that of groceries. None of this expansion has demanded a significant technological overhaul, but was actually made possible by the relentless on the ground work undertaken by gig workers themselves. The relentless pace of work has meant that many believe that they will actually not last in it for very long, not at least beyond a period of a year or two. And workers claim that more than COVID, it has really been company policies that have compromised them. The disproportionate division of risk is also based on a digital Taylorism at work. Monitoring and measurement of work, which is not merely restricted to the end of the labor process, typically seen in remote forms of gig work, but also during it, where the worker stands without control over the work process and bears its risk in entirety. Cloaked, however, in the language of autonomy and flexibility, gig workers are invited to think of themselves actually as equals, something that they deeply value, for instance, being called delivery partners. And yet, they are consistently reduced to cogs in the machine. But of course, this does not mean that workers have no ability to resist. Algorithmic control is not absolute. It also demonstrates a continuity with past labor strategies, labor control strategies, and there has been room here for workers to bypass this algorithmic control. Multiple strategies have been deployed by them. There is frequent sharing of worker IDs, such that one may give up their old ID when they leave for new forms of work to new entrants. This has been particularly critical for platforms where new entrants actually work on different and lower payment rates than older workers. There's also been cases of sharing IDs in order to actually share work. So N, for instance, a worker in Bombay, actually used the strategy to find occasional work during the lockdown, sharing the ID of workers on other platforms. In ride-hailing apps, it's been common for drivers to call consumers to find out the rates that are actually being displayed on the consumers' apps, and then drivers then go on to suggest cancelling the ride, but continue to transport the worker, but collecting the money directly instead of via the app. All of this suggests that subversion is indeed possible. However, the control and power wielded by platforms is enormous. Arbitrary suspension of IDs of workers is actually quite common, and denial of any responsibility is the norm. Workers have had to devise their own measures to mitigate risk, even outside of the pandemic, and collective action is one such form. Although platforms argue that the organizational structure has room for conflict and dispute resolution, this is rarely the case. Fleet leaders or team managers are meant to hear from workers in addition sometimes to taking on the surveillance responsibility for the platform. But in technologically oriented managements of conflict, workers actually find little support. In cases where IDs have been suspended, and this is quite common, especially when workers have been active in organizing others, or when they have missed out on a day of work on the weekend, there is actually little ability to challenge the decision of ID suspension. Workers claim that even going to the local office of the company is of little help, as representatives and team leaders claim that these are decisions made by the back-end team of the company over which they have no control. As one union organizer claimed, it is an utterly dehumanizing experience for workers to not be able to address managers directly. Centralization in the company organization has also amplified this problem, according to the organizer, where managers actually no longer have the ability to take decisions on these issues. It is important to note that this poses a problem not just related to ID suspension, but also other kinds of issues that workers may face in the course of performing their work. When faced with an issue during delivery, for instance, it is other drivers that they must rely on and not the company. The response for platforms has been to ask workers to fill out a Google form stating the problem that they face post facto, or when faced with an irate customer at the time, to call the police. As one worker who had actually been taken hostage by a customer in Delhi reported, neither the manager nor the platform came to his aid when he detailed his experience. Despite this, collective action is actually being channeled towards meeting with managers to enable conciliation rather than to call for strikes. Given the structure of work and the inability of workers to save their income, it's been difficult for workers to sustain strikes. When it has been attempted, and there have been several such attempts in the months after the lockdown, the strikes have not yielded much. As some recounted, this has been owing to a difficulty in sustaining unity, as they called it. S, who worked in Delhi, believed this had to do with workers in the city being migrants and friendships and associations typically following regional lines, such that unity was fractured. But other than that, it was also that the division came to lie between those who are married and unmarried. Workers reported that when it came to strikes, it was always difficult for those married to actually be able to participate for long. As important contributors to the household income, they felt responsible, and in many cases, striking would lead to situations of not actually having food on the table. Unmarried men, particularly in contrast, often stayed together, had lesser expenses to take care of, and thus had an ability to extend their participation in strikes. As opposed to the argument made by Shore et al., economic dependency then is not just a factor of whether one is engaged in platforms on a part-time or full-time basis, but also has to do with other significant social factors and structures. As claimed that given that WhatsApp groups often brought drivers together in the first place, and these groups formed around shifts, friendships and associations would follow the married-unmarried divide. Night shift workers were typically unmarried men, while the day shift would predominantly involve married men. But strikes, as the union organizer also noted, do not have a sufficient impact unless they are citywide. Some recent strikes have been of this kind, but there have also been smaller zone-based strikes which have not yielded much. And establishing connections between zones has proved to be difficult so far. Companies have been able to continue operations because they've been outsourcing work to third-party companies. And it was the belief of many drivers that the entry of third-party companies and a steady reduction in the platform's own payment rates were connected, because platforms were keen to drive out their own workers and outsource the work completely. For the most part, strikes and other forms of collective action in India have actually focused on questions of income. But workers in cities, particularly in the Delhi NCR region, speak of meeting with officials from the Labour Department and district magistrates to pursue the question of the work process, but it has not yielded much. In the last few days, India has dramatically altered its labour policy, moving from a wide set of labour laws to a comprehensive labour code. Though the code contains provisions for social security of gig workers, it poses far graver challenges. In the absence of legal safeguards and difficulty in bargaining with platforms, workers have had to rely on one another and themselves to mitigate risk. So, Caliburg's notion of the individual resources is important, but solidarity between workers has also proved to be vital. Companies, on the other hand, have absorbed responsibility by directing this responsibility towards consumers. Terming delivery workers as hunger warriors, for instance, one platform has asked for contributions from consumers and the public to safeguard workers. But workers have contended that they've actually not received any of the financial aid that was collected in their name. It's also been through the pandemic that platforms have been able to raise significant amount of capital for themselves and actually expand operations. In conclusion, then, the division of risk and responsibility in the gig economy seems to replicate conditions of early industrialization. Workers have little control over the conditions of work, much like in platform work. They're typically pushed to be highly productive, putting themselves at risk, again, similar to platform work. For example, even in the pre-pandemic period, driving at high speeds in order to make their, to hit their daily targets has been critical. Capitalists absolve themselves from responsibility by stating the absence of a legal provision and stating work to be a choice. Here, platform work again is similar but offers some distinction, the promise of autonomy or freedom, which other forms of informal or unorganized work do not promise. Thus, while the precarity of the gig work, long hours of work, no minimum guarantees of pay, social security, etc., speak to the larger history of work under capitalism, there is both a continuity with past labor regimes, but also an element of distinction that technologically mediated work brings in, which is of autonomy guaranteed through technology. Technology here is important to consider not because it has disrupted the economy, but because it is the embodiment of capitalist social relations. Technology here stands above the worker and appears as though it makes neutral decisions on the work process and firing of workers, for instance, through ID suspensions. It surveils workers while creating the illusion that there is no overseer through the day and degrades both the work process and the worker through it. As Braverman argued, the remarkable development of machinery becomes, for the most working population, the source not of freedom but of enslavement, not of mastery but of helplessness, and not of broadening of the horizon of labor but of confinement of the worker within a blind round of servile duties in which the machine appears as the embodiment of science and the worker as little or nothing. In the gig economy, the tension between precarity and autonomy can be resolved here not by rethinking technology itself, but by rethinking and shifting the political economy of work. A focus on the labor process and the ability of the workers to bypass control and build solidarities, therefore, is indicative of how a democratization of such work can actually be imagined. Thank you.